You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the Resistance. Monday, April 29th. I'm Dean Obeidallah. Hoping to be your MBFF. We are live for the next 3 hours. A lot to cover. A little bit of breaking news. Remember when we actually cared if Rod Rosenstein was going to resign and we were freaking out? Oh my God, he's going to resign and Trump's going to put someone in charge of the Mueller investigation that's going to help Mueller. It's going to help Trump and hurt Mueller. Well, Rod Rosenstein just resigned, by the way, like a half hour ago. And none of us care because we now know that Rod Rosenstein, who is a Republican, who was appointed by Trump, was just like those guys on the right, just like the Trumpian guys. In fact, Rod Rosenstein last week gave a speech bragging, touting how Trump adhered to the rule of law. So bye-bye, Rod. Get out. Doesn't really matter. This DOJ is completely infected with Trumpian world. So I hope you had a good weekend. I went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday, the second one. And I didn't know what to expect. Last year I was there when Michelle Wolf told jokes about Sarah Sanders and people on the right freaked out because Michelle Wolf told the truth that Sarah Sanders is a liar. And that upset people on the right because they don't like the truth. And this year, though no comedian, historian Ron Chernow, and I be honest with you, I was critical of it. Olivier Knox, who is the president of the White House Correspondents Association, but he's also SiriusXM's White House correspondent. And he made that choice and I didn't love it and he knew I didn't love it. That's fine. I shared it with him. He came on the show. We talked about it. But I'm telling you, Ron Chernow was actually great. And I told Olivier right after the dinner as well how great it was. And I got it. His goal was to have somebody with more gravitas say what a comedian would say. Not as funny, of course, but some funny stuff there. But making the point about how Donald Trump really is a threat to the First Amendment. And Donald Trump didn't go. He was in his safe space. He was at a rally in Wisconsin among his white people. It was very diverse, all different shades of white. I think there was a guy with a tan there, kind of stunning. And I don't know how he got in. But you know what? For Trump, it was the right choice not to go there. Because first of all, Ron Chernow was funny. He made great points. And third, he's much funnier than Trump could ever be, which is a really low bar. And I want to play a few clips of it because I think it's really important. First, Ron Chernow, if you don't know, presidential historian, got famous for writing various biographies, but the one of Alexander Hamilton is the basis of the Broadway play. So that really thrust him into a new level. And here's a joke he did about Alexander Hamilton, referencing Donald Trump's comments a few weeks ago that America is full. Here's clip number one.
Our founders were highly literate people, and perhaps none more so than one Alexander Hamilton, an immigrant who arrived, thank God, before the country was full. I don't know why they let the guy in. Clearly somebody had slipped up at the southern border.
So he had some funny lines. He had a nice presence about him and very calm and confident demeanor. Then he made some very serious points about Donald Trump's attacks on the media being filled with venom. And he went through historically that presidents and the media have long had adversarial relationships at different times. Certainly President Obama had some with the Fox News people and even other people in the media at times. But it was never about venom. It was never demonizing. It was never calling them the enemy of the people, as Ron Chernow pointed out. And here is Ron Chernow about Donald Trump's assault on the truth. Here's clip number 2, please.
The thing that troubles me most at the moment is the sustained assault on truth, or at least a cavalier disregard of it, both here and by autocratic regimes abroad. As John Adams said, facts are stubborn things and our wishes cannot alter them. Facts are the foot soldiers of our respective professions. They do the hard marching and should wear no ideological coloring. Without the facts, we cannot have agreement in our badly divided nation. More importantly, without the facts, we cannot have an honest disagreement. I applaud any president who aspires to the Nobel Prize for Peace, but we don't want one in the running for the Nobel Prize for Fiction.
And that was perfect timing for that, the Nobel Prize for Fiction, that today, Washington Post came out and that Donald Trump, and I'm not even exaggerating, in his time in the White House, has either lied or misstated or given half-truths 10,000 times. And then finally, Ron Chernow ended with a quick little joke here. He quoted a bunch of Mark Twain quotes, and here's the last one he made, and I thought was a really good point. Here's clip number 3.
And as we head into another election season, I will leave you with one final gem from Twain. Politicians in diapers must be changed often and for the same reason. Good night, and God bless America.
Politicians in diapers must be changed often for the same reason. Obviously, they're full of things. And in the case of Trump, it's an unfunny diaper that is sagging and really smells bad. Now, what I found interesting is that overwhelmingly the crowd loved this. But I saw something startling, and I have to share this with you. There were some Trump supporters there. I know some of them, and they were there. And during Ron Chernow's address, which you can hear was mild-mannered, he's an historian, he's not a comedian, he's not a firebrand, they were angry the entire speech. When Ron Chernow quoted the exact words Donald Trump has used about the media, they looked distressed. The look on their face like, how dare you? And during Chernow's jokes, it was remarkable. The whole crowd's laughing, and they're very subtle jokes about Trump. And they are angry. They won't laugh and they won't applaud. And to me, that said something. It was frightening to me. It was startling and unsettling, and I'll tell you why. It seems that Donald Trump's demand of loyalty has now trickled down to people in the rank and file, to even people, lower level people in the media, or even people I don't even know if they're in the media, just sitting there who had Trump hats on earlier and they were invited. They can't laugh at Trump. They can't smile when someone says something critical of Trump. They have to be angry at all times. And I don't know if they fear that somehow it gets back to the supreme leader and then they lose their jobs in the media being a trumpet. I don't get it. But what does concern me is that there was a poll late last year which found 44% of Trump supporters, almost half of them, supported the idea of Donald Trump shutting down media outlets for bad behavior. And that was the term, bad behavior, meaning any kind of unfair criticism. So nearly half of the Republican base would be happy with closing the media down if Trump said it. And that's without Trump even going on a campaign around the country going, we have to close media outlets down that are fake news or enemy of the people. That number would go way up. And that's what concerns me. That you see this kind of loyalty in a way I've never seen. I used to laugh at Obama jokes. With the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the comedian would make fun of Obama all the time. And if they were funny, I'd laugh. I'd go, how dare you make fun of my President Obama? But that's the world they live in. And if you saw it, if you were in the dinner and you saw this, you would be alarmed too. It's not normal. It's not normal to see 8 people at a table laughing and applauding and 2 looking angry. And that replayed in various tables going on. People I knew who were Trump supporters. And I hope that alarms you and tells you something as we move into a much more serious topic here, which is why you don't hear the rank and file Trump supporter, no, even Republicans, slamming Trump for defending Robert E. Lee, for his praising of someone who fought a war to enforce white supremacy and fought slavery, because that is the mindset of the Trumps. If you're in the Trump base now, it's not about supporting a candidate or ideology. It's about supporting Donald Trump and whatever he does, whatever he says. Anything he says, you have to support it. If you don't, you're not loyal. In fact, later in the show, Angela Carson will be here from Fox News, from Media Matters, talk about Fox News, where Donald Trump over the weekend lashed out against Judge Napolitano, who is his friend for 30 years. But Judge Napolitano dared to criticize Trump on air, even though they're friends literally for 30 years, as Napolitano said today. He dared to criticize Trump on air, and there is Trump ripping at him on Twitter over the weekend, 2 different tweets. And that shows the kind of loyalty Trump demands of Fox News, of his base, and of the Republican Party. So let's get to what happened over the weekend. It's heartbreaking, and it's sad that it happened again within 6 months. Another terrorist attack by white supremacists on a synagogue in America here, and this time in San Diego, California. 1 person killed, 3 injured. The gunman, I'm not going to waste your time saying his name, but he's a 19-year-old piece of garbage who, according to the police, if the manifesto posted is his, and they believe it is as of now, but we're not 100% sure, filled with anti-Semitic garbage, with white nationalist conspiracy theories. In this manifesto, he says point blank he was inspired by the shooting of Muslims at the New Zealand church mosque just last month, and also inspired by the synagogue terrorist in Pittsburgh 6 months ago who killed Jewish Americans. They're just there to pray. And the person also says that he was responsible for a fire a few weeks ago at a mosque in California, not far from where this happened. And again, that makes the point that to these anti-Semites, these scum walking the earth, they hate Jews, they tend to hate Muslims. And people who hate Muslims tend to hate Jews too, and they tend to hate blacks and Latinos. And every box that Trump has checked off in his campaign, they tend to hate all of us. We're all in this together. That's the truth. And here's what's kind of scary and remarkable, that the chief of police said that the shooter called the police afterwards because he fled the scene. He wasn't tackled there. And he told them, I shot the people, and turned himself in. Put his hands up when the police saw him. Didn't want to shoot out, didn't want to die in a blaze of glory. He wanted to stay alive, to be a hero to the white nationalist, white supremacist movement. And that's what's remarkable to me, that we see this uptick, clear an uptick in white supremacist terrorism. And we have Donald Trump not addressing it the way you should be addressing it. Did he express sympathy for those who were killed in the shooting? Yes, he did here. He called a rabbi. That's what you should do. I'm not going to applaud someone for being a human being. You know, it would be nice if he'd call the 3 African-American ministers of the churches that were burned down in the South, but he's not going to do that because those communities don't matter to him. We all know that. He didn't call the imam at the mosque just 2 blocks away from where the shooting happened, or a few miles away from the shooting happened, which was lit on fire by the same guy and doused with graffiti of anti-Muslim bigotry, but he doesn't care about Muslims either. He's made some calculation to be a human reaction here to this tragedy. And I'm not going to applaud it. That's what everyone should do. That's what you should do. But what Donald Trump has done in the past, after 49 Muslims were killed in New Zealand, he was asked, is there an uptick in white nationalist violence? And what did Trump say? I don't really believe so. Quote, I think it's a small group of people that have very, very serious problems. In fact, Kellyanne Conway was on CNN with Jake Tapper yesterday. Jake Tapper was pressing her on that point. Does Donald Trump view white supremacist terrorism on the uptick? And here is the battle between her and Jake Tapper, because all she did was deflect and deflect and deflect. Here's clip number 4.
My question was, does President Trump think white nationalism is a growing threat around the world? Because he said 6 weeks ago, I don't really. And it's a small group of people that have very, very serious problems. There are people in law enforcement and elsewhere who think, actually, white nationalism, white supremacy is a growing threat. And now we've had the second fatal synagogue shooting in 6 months. I'm not saying it's President Trump's fault.
And that's one of them. I think there's anti-Christianity. That's why the Sri Lankans were gunned down. They're not Eastern worshippers, Obama and Hillary
Clinton. Of course.
They are Christians.
But Islamist terrorism, nobody disputes that that's a serious threat.
Well, she wouldn't call it radical Islamist terrorism. Hillary, when she at her convention, she wouldn't call it radical Islamic terrorism.
Trump. President Trump said he didn't
that's why he's the president.
He didn't think white nationalism was a growing threat around the world. And I'm asking.
He does think it's a threat, and there's no question it's a threat.
He does think it's a threat.
Yes, of course he thinks it's a threat. That's why he condemned it in no uncertain terms. And
he said 6 weeks ago, I don't really think it's a threat.
No, they were saying a growing threat. But it is a threat.
Is it a growing threat?
It's horrible wherever it is.
Remarkable that Kellyanne Conway literally brought up Hillary Clinton and not saying radical Islamic terrorism, which I think is remarkable because I've written various articles saying Trump demanded everyone say radical Islamic terrorism, but Donald Trump would never dare utter the words white supremacist terrorism. You will never hear the words white supremacist terrorism out of Donald Trump's mouth because that would piss off his base. Too many people in his base would be upset by that. Not all, but enough would be angry. Is white supremacist terrorism on the uptick? Let me read you the numbers, my friends, here. In 2017, there were 34 Americans killed on U.S. soil by extremists, according to the ADL, Anti-Defamation League. So 34 Americans killed by extremists, various type of extremists. Of the 34, 18 were killed by white supremacists. Of that, 8 were killed by Islamic-related extremists. What happened last year? 50 Americans on U.S. soil killed by extremists. Want to guess how many? We'll start first. How many do you think were tied to ISIS or Islamic? 0. How many do you think of the 50 who were killed were tied to right-wing groups? All 50. How many of those 50 do you think were tied to white supremacists? 39. We've gone from 18 deaths in 2017 by white supremacists to 39 last year, and Donald Trump then supremacist in his state. Then they go, oh, we got the governor, got the guy in power. There's no need to do any more bombings or kill any more black people. We're fine. White supremacy is protected. No, it did the opposite. It emboldened them. The 16th Street Baptist church was blown up just months later, and 4 young African-American girls were killed. There were bombings across Alabama after George Wallace was elected because they felt, the white supremacists, that the guy in the governor's mansion's got their back. He's one of ours now, and we can do whatever we want. We feel good. And the people in Alabama voted for him, so that's got to say they're on board with our white supremacist agenda. That is exactly what is happening today in 2019 in the United States of America with Donald Trump. The white supremacists who brag and praise Donald Trump openly, from Richard Spencer to David Duke, and the list goes on, they think, well, America's on our side now. They elected a white supremacist. There's no reason, except for Trump, that you see this uptick of from 2016 to 2017 in spikes in hate crimes against people of color, Muslims and Jews. 2018, same thing. And a spike in actual murders on U.S. soil by self-avowed white supremacists. That's what's going on. And even people who are not even killing, they didn't get through, but they're plots. And I've read just in January, 3 young guys who are white supremacists, who were Trump supporters in this case, were plotting to kill Muslims in upstate New York. They were arrested. 3 guys in Kansas sentenced to 25 years to life in January. They were plotting to kill Muslims in Kansas, where they live, Somali Muslim refugees there. They were self-avowed Trump supporters, and they were white supremacists. This is what's going on right before our eyes. And you know, Trump, it's remarkable. Trump has no problem saying the media is the enemy of the people. Over the weekend, he called the FBI scum. He's called NFL players who took a knee to protest criminal justice inequities. He called them son of a bitches. But he's never called white supremacists scum. He's never called white supremacists son of the bitches. He's never called white supremacists enemy of the people. It's easy. He could do that any day. He could tweet that. He could just give a speech Saturday. Didn't do any of that. Do you think that's just a happenstance? You think it's a mistake? Trump, oh yeah, he only thinks of enemy of the people is the media. He never thought it connected that with white supremacy. It's got to be an oversight. He's got to think they are the enemy of the people. No, folks, this is all by design. Donald Trump can tweet tonight, white supremacy is the enemy of the people. That's simple. David Duke is a scumbag. David Duke's a son of a bitch. Nope. He's harder on Elizabeth Warren on Twitter, calling her names, than he is on white supremacist leaders. Think about that for a second. That's the man in the White House. That's all by design. This is the man who has attacked over 500 people, places, and things, according to the New York Times, on Twitter. Never attacked white supremacists by name. Never, 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 never. So Trump wants applause for calling a rabbi up and expressing concern, which any human being should do in a leadership position. This is the same Donald Trump who over the weekend was at the NRA Friday bragging that he is fighting to make sure anyone can get a gun anytime, and he's going to fight any laws to make it harder. And on the same Friday, he was there praising Robert E. Lee, a hero of the white supremacist movement. Donald Trump calling the rabbi is like an arsonist pretending to care about the victims of his fire. That's what Donald Trump is. He's an arsonist, and people are dying, and sometimes he pretends to care. But if he did care, there'd be no qualms. He would be actually using beyond words. He'd be saying, I'm making the white supremacist threat in this country a priority for my administration. We're going to dedicate money and resources to take it on as a threat that it is. He's not going to do that. In fact, they have ended funding for a group that de-radicalizes people from white supremacist movements. And according to the Daily Beast, just 2 weeks ago, they got rid of a unit in the Department of Homeland Security that studies domestic terrorism. So I want to know, where are we going? We know Donald Trump needs violence for 2020. He needed it in 2016. Is this part of it? Is this part of his plan to unleash white supremacists on us and never really denounce them the way he should? And of course, not at all dedicate the resources of this government? I'm not sure. I want to leave you, though, before we take a break, with a more upbeat quote from Khalil Gibran, who is, some people know him, he's a philosopher. He's Lebanese. He came to America and he wrote a book called The Prophet and other books. And he had this great quote that I love. He said, I love you when you bow in your mosque, you kneel in your temple, you pray in your church. For you and I are sons and daughters of one religion, and it is the Spirit. That's what we need more of. We need more love. But at the same time, nice words and platitudes are not going to save lives in this time with a spike of white supremacist violence. We need a leader who's going to be very clear about it, who's going to dedicate resources and rhetoric to making it clear there's no place for this in America. I want a president who's going to recognize that white supremacy is the enemy of the people, that white supremacist terrorism is a threat to this country. And if you can't solve ISIS without saying radical Islamic terrorism, then why not apply the same rule here? Then you can't solve white supremacist terrorism if you're not going to say it. And Trump won't say it. He could say it. He's made a choice not to say it. Think about that. The President of the United States has made a choice not to condemn white supremacist terrorism in unqualified terms. That's where we are, April 29, 2019, the United States of America. Jews, Muslims, blacks, their places of worship are not safe. And the man in the White House is the arsonist. Let's take a break. I'd love to hear from you. 866-997-4748 right after this.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
My slogan for Trump in 2020, Trump for prison 2020.
Sirius